Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Dialogue with the Youth. So on Gunjur Online TV, once again, you are with your host, Mr. Ibrahim Skatruel Jane. Today, Wednesday, on the 1st of December, 2021, we are here back with our issues, current affairs, in the Gambia, and we are going to touch on a range of issues that we need to really set some light on for people to understand and see the gist of this. There's nobody who can discuss these issues, once again, especially on the issues of environment, than a dynamic young man who is an environmentalist par excellence. The sweep of his erudition, especially on issues about environment and our surroundings, is platonic. And once again, Omar, welcome to Dialogue on the Youth, so on Gunjur Online TV. You've been here a regular visitor anyway. We've been having you a couple of times, but this is the first time on Dialogue with the Youth. So welcome, my nephew.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Johnny, and the entire team of Gunjur Online News. It's my pleasure to be here with you guys today. And we are thanking all our audience down there for their time and effort that they have put together to be able to come today and attend this program. We look forward to a fruitful discussion with them.
Thank you, Omar. It's our pleasure really to have you here. And we are all proud of what you're doing, the whole of the Gambia and Gunjur specifically, and us, the Janakunda people and everywhere else, the Saho Kunda people and everybody. And it is a pleasure to have a young, dynamic, and very, very disciplined and versatile young man to discuss issues that are affecting us, and we need to address it because these are issues that are global issues, and Gambia cannot be left out. Omar, and you in your interview with the Akamba Times, you quote. I will read that quotations. I will quote: "The Gambia is faced with dire environmental problems ranging from deforestation, unsustainable coastal mining, poor solid waste management, pollution, squatting among a range of indiscriminate activities, leading to a great loss of biodiversity." And you continue to say these issues compounded with ineffective policy enforcement, corruption, weak institutions has resulted in exponential growth in the current environmental crisis in the country. Reading your letter that you wrote to the president back in 2019, if I am right, you conclude that you said, Mr. President, the Gambian people are highly optimistic that you are the change that the country has been yearning for, and please prove us right in protecting our environment. Example, the Bijilo Monkey Park, as well as address the other environmental issues across the country. Have you been proven right?
Well, so far it has been the same trend. I think the only president that have done extremely well was Sadawala Karaba Jawara when he came with the Banjul Declaration, and as well as setting aside some protected areas in the country. We have about 8 national parks in the Gambia. That was a tremendous effort of the then Jawara government. But all what we've seen in the Jame era was more about coastal sand mine in Burfoot, in Badakungu, in Sanya, in Gunju, and as well as in Kartong. If you look at all of those things, we realize that looking at that great vegetation vegetation being ripped off, without not looking at the future of the particular country, without not looking at the issue of climate change, look at the sea level rise, you look at the livelihood of these local communities who live around those local communities is of a great concern. And then looking at the Barrow administration, looking at the Jamie administration, I realize that these are things that they have greatly failed in terms of putting our environmental resources in the country. If you look at coastal salmon as a major, issue in Gunjur, in Khartoum, in Sanyang, where they are mining the zircon, the black sand. You look at what issue of deforestation. We've been seeing the issue of rosewood that has leading to contentions between the border villages between Fonyi area as well as the Casamance region. We've seen how the Senegalese forces in the country have passed their border and then going to the Gambian territory trying to chase those lumber people who are involved in trading of timbers in that area. So all of these are issues that I was trying to raise the flag when Barrow came into power. That hey, if we want to have an effective peace in this particular country, yes, we can have issue of economics, policy in terms of politics down there, conventional politics down there, but don't forget about environment and don't also forget about the livelihood of your people who are in the Gambia.
Yes, Omar. But you wrote that letter a while ago, and I don't think your advice has been hit by the president, because I want you, because you mentioned one thing that is particularly very, very important but misunderstood by many people. That is the improper zoning of development projects in highly ecological sensitive areas, among others. These are some of the things that when you raise, people will say these are developments, and we have to develop on all those things. Can you comment on that, Omar?
Well, the development, as you might put it, might come in different contexts. People will say, hey, when you are doing development, it has to come with some sort of negative implications on the lives and livelihood of the local people. It has to deal with some destruction towards the environment or the vegetation covers. Well, that has never been the case in most cases. This is why before you do a concrete buildings of whatsoever we call it in terms of development of building high-rise buildings, we gotta do environment and social impact studies to look at what impact will this particular project have on the environment, the ecology, and as well as the livelihood of the people who live in that particular area. You gotta do the baseline studies. You have to come with the environmental report, and you have to do what we call the public consultations. You gotta hear from the perspective of the people who are gonna be impacted if you happen to mount the foundation and then erect that building. I was yes, we can have so many development projects in the Gambia, be it a hotel, a conference center, a new official building somewhere, but we got a zone, we got to look at the proper area where we can kind of put that particular development initiative without not having a major impact on the ecology of the Gambia. And then let's say, we have seen that most of the development in the Gambia are based mostly in the Great Banyan area. This is not the only place we have in the Gambia. We have abundant land when you pass Kalaji, going down to the Kians, to the Jaras, to the provincial part of the country, both between the South Bank and North Bank of the Gambia. So development initiatives can also be centralized. They can be decentralized in the country. We can move them from the urban area to the peri-urban area, to the hinterland of the country. That way we can create jobs for the Gambian people in that part of the country too. That way we can then minimize the issue of crime, traffic congestion, and also provide some sort of job opportunity and also other development peripheries that comes with that particular project. So this is what I'm talking about. We got some development projects in the Gambia. Things should not be only concentrated in the urban area, but we got to try to decentralize it across the country.
Yes, you gave that advice to the president, and you said, I hope that your administration should look into the opportunities of decentralizing development projects to other parts of the country. Why that become very, very difficult for our leaders in our country, to the extent that they go and kind of almost virtually excoriate the Bigelow Monkey Park. Can you tell us the importance of the monkey park? Because people will say they are monkeys and all those things, but the park, the environment has significant, the impact on those areas and the country. Maybe our people don't know the significance of these trees and these forests that are in the middle of us. The importance of them is not emphasized, that much, because I remember, and the Mr. Badara Bajo's project, we started it, and we call our elderly people and talk about them to stop cutting trees for to grow rice and all those things, to talk to them about the modern way of doing things. And they kind of laughing at us, not knowing the impact of those trees and how cutting them will affect them as a people. Can you go and tell us some of the importance of that monkey park that we want to put a so-called conference center? We can build a conference center somewhere else, decentralized development, and probably stop internal migration within our country, and that will have a huge impact on the youth that are coming from the rural area to come and aggregate in combo areas. Tell us about the importance of, for example, the Bijulo Park, the forests, and all those things the environmentals are talking about, so that our viewers can understand, Omar.
Yes, Bijulo Monkey Park is the old case. We're gonna look at that as a case study here, and then also look at the old cycle track. It's another place in the Kotu area that has been recently given now to whether they put like the so-called Malaysian, people, investors, or the so-called, Chinese people to say whatsoever they put that name. I don't care. But the main thing is, look at Bijulo Monkey Park. It's a place that we got like the red colobus monkey, and also have the paras monkey down there in Bijulo Monkey Park. These are like highly ecological species down there. The paras monkey, their population across the world is highly endangered. There are very few of them left around the world. You have University of Cambridge in the UK, and have like other research scientists coming down to the Gambia to conduct their studies at Bijulo Monkey Park. Anytime you have a research scientist going down to a particular country, if they are not native to that particular country, they gotta hire a local tour guide. So who are the tour guides in the Gambia? Their own Gambian brothers, their own Gambian people who are self-employed to become official tourist guide in the country. Any trip that they do from Senegambia area, from Kotu area, from Bakau area, or anywhere where we have like the tourism development, they are paid for their service, for the number of hours that they have invested in to take a particular tourist from their hotel to Bijulo Monkey Park. And that money goes to feed a particular family somewhere within the country. And that money is trying to, give life to somebody who is a Gambian to have a decent life. Yeah. So if you look at it from an ecological point of view, having that conference center at Bijulo Monkey Park is going to create noise pollution. One, because a higher number of people within that conference area, people are going to be yelling. There's going to be traffic here and there. And that's also going to result in what we call human-wildlife conflict. We've seen monkeys trespassing, going to people's compound down there, ripping up their bananas, their mangoes, their other fruit trees that we get in those compounds. Those are things that need to put into perspective. They got to conduct that environmental ecological studies, the environmental impact assessment, before they go ahead and have Bijulo Monkey Park, the conference center inside Bijulo Monkey Park. What sort of negative effects will this thing have on the monkey population at Bijulo? One. Two, what sort of impact is this thing going to have on the local Gambian people who are hired as tour guides in this particular park if there's no monkeys in that particular place? If monkeys happen to leave their habitat, which is the monkey park, and go into people's houses, what's going to happen? In terms of people's, let's say, their farmlands, monkeys can just go, within a day, started ripping up people's bananas, their cassavas, and other vegetables in those compounds. Two, tourists who are coming to the Gambia, specifically to go to Bijulo Monkey Park, as part of the laser pursuit in the Gambia, are they going to come to Gambia again? Will Gambia be able to attract these people? We don't have the big fives in the Gambia. We don't have any lions, the wildebeest, the giraffe, the lions in the Gambia. All what we have in the Gambia is the birds and the small primates. These primates are the monkeys and the Guinea baboons that can be found in Makasutu. So once we don't try to protect these resources, we want to always at least endanger them and subject them to all kind of stress. These monkeys or these wildlife species in the Gambia are going to run away, or they're going to die of stress. And when that one happens, who is going to lose? It's the Gambia who's going to lose. How many percentage does Gambia tourism push into our GDP? How many Gambians are employed indirectly or directly from tourism? A huge number of them. We are talking about over more than 200,000 Gambian people who are employed either directly or indirectly in the tourism sector. So when you want to put up a development, we want to be very mindful where do we institute that particular development project within the country. So that was my main concern when they started come up with the conference, the Karaba Jawara Conference Center, going down the Bijulo Monkey Park and putting it right inside that, reserved.
Yeah, Omar, it is sad knowing, the relation that we have with our forests, with our monkeys, with all the biodiversity that is around us, the importance of it, and bringing this old cycle track and building all kind of stuff there to destroy the environment. It's so heartbroken sometimes, and but as you said, what I think one of your questions that you wrote and asked the president is, what is going to be the future of the monkeys at the park? What are we going to report to the next conference of parties on climate change and desertification? What information is Gambia Tourist Board or Ministry of Tourism going to explain to birders visiting the country? So,
Yes,
and
because
tourism
if you look at tourism,
Go ahead.
if you look at tourism, the highest spenders are like the eco-tourists. These are people who are not interested in like fancy hotels in the Gambia. They don't want to go into the like of Sunny Gambia or Caribbean Beach Hotel. They might even go down there for a temporary stay. But they want to go into the remote part of the country. They might be staying in Gunjur, one of the lodges down there, or somewhere in Janjambure or in the Fonies. But they want to specifically go down the Bijou Monkey Park or the old cycle track to look at one particular species of bird that they have been following across the entire African continent. Some of the birds are like endemic; they're only found in the Gambia. But some of them are like migratory species. They travel from Europe during the winter time to Africa because the weather down there is more conducive for them. They go to Africa, do the breeding season down there, lay their eggs. Once the eggs are hatched, they migrate with those ones and come down to the UK during the spring or during the summertime. And some of those stories will be like, you know what, hey, we put the ring on my bird in the UK and I see that bird in the UK during the summer. So, looking at the migratory pattern, they're going to be in the Gambia during the season. Or I'm looking for this special bird in my life that before I put on my heart as a, professional ornithologist, I want to see this bird. Where can I see it? According to the bird guide of Sunny Gambia, I can only find this bird in the Gambia during this time of the year. And I want to go to the Gambia. They're going to come down there, find a bird's guide, a tour guide who's special in bird watching, pay that individual high amount of money. It might be $17,000, 18,000, or even more than that, because you charge them per day, or even the trip. Gambians are making a huge amount of money from bird watching alone. So if you're looking at that one, you go into Sunny Gambia. You go down to Caribbean Beach Hotel, go to BB Hotel, look at Gambian people who are doing bird watching, the Gambia Bird Watching Association. How many people are employed down there? You come and put a conference center at Bijilo Monkey Park, not put into perspective how will that impact on the livelihood of these people was quite disheartening for me. I couldn't able to understand that. And every year, Gambian officials, from the Gambia Tourism Board, from Ministry of Tourism, they attend international conferences. It might be the World Tourism Fair, it might be the Root and Bird Fairs in the UK, or other, bird fairs or tourism programs across the continent, or even in Europe. And if you go down and you sell some of the main attractions, the AAA, we're talking about attraction, accessibility, and accommodation. If you have accessibility, Gambia is so close to the UK, about 6 hours or 7 hours 6 hours by flight. We have like nice hotels in the Gambia. The other is attraction. So you're supposed to have something unique in your country that can be able to pull tourists to come down to the Gambia. Imagine Gambia's competing with Senegal. They got Fatala in Senegal. They got Nyokokaba in Senegal. They also have like this Casamas region of Senegal that's very, very rich in terms of biodiversity. We don't want to lose our tourists going down to Senegal. I'm not trying to be like, anti-Senegal here, but we want to create jobs for our own Gambian people. We want the economy of Gambia in terms of like the informal sector, people to be able to at least have something from tourism to help our own Gambian people.
Yeah, thank you, Omar. I think you've mentioned one thing that is so important, and people are not seeing that. People are not the Europeans and the Americans and all these rich people are not living in Europe or America to come and just go into fancy hotels in the Gambia because they are not there. No matter how much whatever edifies in terms of hotels and all that we build, it cannot just be more than what is here in this country. They are coming there specifically for those monkey park and those specific monkeys that are unique to the Gambia. They are coming because the birds, who are fantastic, you have a rainbow of birds that they cannot see in their country. Or as you said, the ringbird that have seen in England now migrated and is in Gambia, and how it adopts in that environment. And this creates a lot of an opportunity for that country. And because one of your questions serving to the president in your letter, he said, is the proposed project likely to negatively affect the income level of employment opportunities for vulnerable groups? Why is our people, our intellectuals, our government not assessing all these things, knowing Gambia, people who are coming to Gambia are not there for the conference, whatever, however important it is. We are not underestimating or under denigrating the importance of the conference rooms and maybe the all the shopping malls that they are talking about. But why can't you decentralize those things and send them to somewhere where there are no forests and all those things and create, you're going to benefit as a country, Omar.
Well, it depends on who you entrust with a particular project. If you politicize it, you're gonna have politicians or you're gonna have people who does not have the necessary academic or intellectual training overseeing projects that need to fall in the hands of professionals who understand that particular industry. So we need to understand the intersection between politics and the intersection between real development, and be able to at least put people in the right position and respect their own expertise and experience. Yes, and also avoid political interference in certain kind of projects in the country. Yes, when we have the funding from China to develop the conference center in the Gambia to host the OIC, yes, they were looking at what accessibility from the airport probably. They also want to put it somewhere very close to the tourism industry, whereby they can look at the ocean down there, or at least go somewhere very close to the capital in Banjul and all of those stuff. But then imagine if they have zoned that project somewhere in the country, like in the Fonis, in the Kians, in the Jara, and in the Woodleys. How many people are going to go down there when they have a job in that particular conference center and buy a compound and build that compound? It will come in like, let's say, strong internet. It's going to come with electricity. It's going to come with water supply. The communities around that area will also enjoy the same development alongside that conference center. So that was another thing I was looking at. So it is so important, quite important. If we are building projects, we have what we call multi-stakeholder discussion. We brainstorm, bring in different people and different expertise. Yes, you can have somebody who understands about events management, and they tell you, hey, build this conference center in Bijilo because it's going to be very close to the airport, it's going to be very close to Banjul, it's going to be very close to the Senegambia area. But you can have somebody who's environmentally conscious and say, don't build this thing here because it's in a highly ecological sensitive area. You're going to have somebody, an economic expert, who will tell you, build this thing in Bikama area. You're going to have somebody, an engineer, who will tell you, hey, the ground level or the soil of this particular area or the environment around this area is not good. Let's put this conference center somewhere here. And you're going to have somebody who's a conventional development practitioner who will tell you, we want to promote sustainable development in this country. Let's put this development somewhere so that we can address the issue of rural-urban migration. It's going to create a job for our Gambian people in this part of the country. So you need multi-stakeholder, group to be able to just brainstorm and come up with a policy paper or less an assessment report for development projects in the Gambia.
Yeah, that's very good, Omar. And once again, what we are doing is we have a very, very young and energetic and intellectual par excellence, as I always say, with sweep of erudition in different areas, His platonic devotion to environment, but he dilates on many myriad of issues and all those things. And the Gambia is blessed to have younger people, who are exposed on all over the place. And we are discussing about the current issues, but first on the list of that issues is environment. Because once we don't get the environment right, nothing will be right. We are going to see our animals without food. We are going to see our environment getting hotter and hotter and hotter. We're going to see shortages of our water supplies and many, so you can count it and it. And we are going to have diseases because our monkeys, our deers, our antelopes that we are destroying their habitats will going to come to search for food or probably going to migrate. The next generations, our kids, our sons and daughters will not know, what these animals are, which is going to be a catastrophic thing for us as a people. And where they were going to migrate to all the other countries to look for basic things, the birds that are unique in that country. Those are treasures for our country, the Gambia. Omar, and you say the country need effective policy enforcement, honest decision makers, and a working citizenry to avoid any. That's so important. The citizenry need to be awakened, especially the youths who are the largest population in that country. They need to know how powerful they are, and they need to know, the people who are 80 years old, 90 years old, 70 years old, or dads and moms and all those things. They don't know anything about the environment. The future is theirs. They need to get up and get enlightened and fight for the preservation of our environment and their livelihood and their kids. So that is so important. You can emphasize on that, the citizenry, especially the youths, because this is dialogue with the youth. So, and youths are the future of any country if they're going to progress. Before coming to you, greetings to my own brother Ibrahim, Alaji Ibrahim Jata. Say proud of you too, and Idrisam, another brother of mine. Good evening, brothers, and salam to you, everyone. Alaji said global warming is indeed a concern. Omar.
Well, if you look at Gambia, a higher proportion of the citizens that are youths. These are people who falls between the age of 35 to somewhere around, we call it 18 years or 20 years, where I say, we want to draw the line. So if you have a citizenry or a high number of your citizens who are youths, who are not that much awakened, or they don't know the importance of environment, they don't know about their importance on the way certain kind of decisions are made, it's quite sad. Because if you have somebody in the office who is in 60 years, 50 years, or even above, anywhere past 50 years, and then they are trying to make development projects or decisions that is just to suit their political tenure in office or during their term as a government official, then most of the time not thinking about what is going to be the implication of that particular initiative or project in the next 20 years, 30 years, or 40 years down the line. Unlike when you have a youth who is very much conscious and then knows the implication of their decision making, that in my own lifetime, this impact or this implication will have an effect on my life, on my wife, on my kids' life. They'll make certain kind of conscious decisions. I was like, we can have beautiful policies in the Gambia. If you talk about the environment, we have like the NEMA, which is like the National Environment Management Act, NEMA Act. We have the fisheries regulations, and then we have the Gambia Environment Action Plan, and then you have the Biodiversity Act in the Gambia. But how many Gambian people really understand about those environmental policies? A very few of us. So this is why we have like a small minority who are like not so much passionate about the environment, champion environment initiative in the Gambia, and you have like a high majority of the Gambian people who don't even understand what is we're advocating for. So I was like, if we have an awakened citizens who understand about the importance of environment and our ecological resources, they're gonna champion environmental, causes. And then that's gonna be a paradigm shift from a small minority to a higher majority of the Gambian people who will understand about our life and the livelihood depend on the environment that's in the country. And then they will look for a proper environment managers in the country. Before we are talking about climate change is going to affect the future generation. We've seen that now. There's drought in some part of Kenya, in Egypt, in Eritrea, and other part of Africa. We've seen the same thing in the hinterland of the Gambia, good provinces. Right now, we are receiving like less short rainfall in the Gambia, there's a lot of drought in the Gambia, there's climate-induced disasters in the Gambia than before. Something that used to be a thing of the past is now a thing of the present. So we got to act fast and we got to act now. And that one cannot be done in the action of the youth, the citizens. They got to understand that we got something which is very urgent and it's in our hand now.
Yeah, thank you so much, Omar. Dennis Wingate, Wingate says, you are making some very good points, Omar. Perhaps looking after the environment should be taught in all schools. Omar, I think, I really, really speaking, we see in this country here, they're creating, toy animals, toy plants, and all those, and then the kids gets so connected to these bees, these animals and all those things. Even in real life, when they see those animals and the dogs, they want to grab them. They forget about how dangerous they can be because they were taught, that these are your friends and all those things. I think Gambian school curriculum should teach environment since primary school, and we go so that we can imbibe, we can internalize this concept of protecting the environment, because people don't care about the environment. Cut the trees, God has put it there, it's going to come up again, because I know people who challenge me and said they're nothing, God has put them there and all those things. They have no link. They cannot see the link between the environment and our livelihood. Go ahead, Omar.
In 2015, it was the same mindset that the Gambian people have about the unsustainable fisheries or lack of a fishery in the Gambia. Most of us, we are talking about issues in Sanya, in Gunjur, and in Karong. That the fish stock in the Gambia is going to deplete. It's going to decline. It's going to deplete. If we don't do any strong policy intervention here, we're going to have a major national food security crisis in the Gambia. People were like, oh, no, it's not true. God is the one that make fish and put it in the water. There's no way that, if we harvest the resources, we can have an issue. We can have a problem. What is happening now? How much were the Gambian people buying fish in the Gambia in 2015 compared to how much are they buying fish right now in 2021? Look at the quantity of fish that they used to caught in the Gambia 5 years ago compared to now. It was more of like now a huge mature tilapia fish down the line before 5 years ago. Right now, we're having like more of a juvenile fish. How does the trade dynamic also shift from being dominated by our own Gambian people to being dominated by the foreign nationalities in the country? So all of these are implications that we say, we need people with integrity, people who are very honest, people who have Gambia at heart. We have policies in the Gambia, very romanticized ones, beautiful ones, but we need Gambian people who are action-oriented, who are very honest, and who are thinking about the future of our country to be able to at least implement and enforce those policies. So climate, environment was things that Gambian people were like, never, that much not concerned about, but we are seeing the implications. Every residence in the Gambia, if there's a windstorm, how many people lost their houses? How many people, lose their concrete roofs? If there's no windbreaker, remember, way back in the Gambia, 20 years ago, in my own lifetime, I have seen in major communities, they have like big trees. There's a mahogany, rosewood, silk cotton tree, and other big trees inside communities. Hardly do people encounter, destructions like we are seeing today. The prevalent rate in the Gambia right now is more higher now compared to 10 years ago. Because right now we are chopped down most of the big trees that used to serve as windbreakers. And now we are dealing with the natural consequence.
Yeah, that's very true. Once again, the youth of the Gambia, what we are discussing, the importance of environment in the Gambia. Way back, when I was young, Gunjur is a thick forest. With all kind of, you don't need to eat at home. You can just go and do whatever in the you meander in the bushes and all those things. You're not hungry. The food is there. All kind of wild fruits are there that are beneficial to you, the animals and all those things. They are not there anymore. The impact of this, even in terms of the firewood that we use now, there's no firewood. Life become more and more expensive. As Omar says, Omar on the 13th of November, you send a post, you say out of control, Gambia's fishing industry. Not only will we continue to see hike in fish price in our local market, their fishing fleets will also haul as much seafood as they can and as fast as they can, with little regard for how these practices will affect average citizens of the Gambia. Now the cheapest source of protein, the bonga, is not affordable for our people. Few years ago, people will argue with us. He said the fish will never get finished in our ozones and all those things. Because of our activities, Omar, we also see huge amount of seaweeds coming out of our seas. And the consequence of those, is dire. The presence of higher level of nutrients such as phosphorus and nitrogen increase in water. That is some of the scientific research that came up. Sewage discharge from people, run off from cities and industrial areas. Some of these things, the implication of our not taking care of our environment, including our seas and our fishes. Can you please tell us of those things, Omar, including the pollution that is happening in our country, especially Gunjur, Katong, Sanyang, and all those things, the consequence of those on our people. And we are seeing that now. Hopefully, when we talk about these things, people will reflect and think that, our actions or our inactions and our pollutions and all those things by sometimes, most of the time, by foreign agents is having a huge impact on us as a people. Go ahead, Omar.
If we look at the issue of pollution across the country, well, I haven't read any scientific report on that, but it's going to have some health implications. Right now, the cheapest source of protein in the Gambia is bunga fish. That is expensive. The $200 or the $300 you're going to give out as fish money, part of that will go to buying only fish. and then the remaining leftover will go down to buy the vegetables, the cooking oil, or the peanut butter down there, or something else to be able to at least cook that dumb or that chew at the family level. If you were giving out 200, now you got to increase that because your wife or somebody who is cooking at home will tell you, you know what, hey, the money that you gave me is not enough. Marceda, Coletta, signing things in the market are now expensive. What I used to spend on buying fish alone was this much amount, but right now this is how much I spent in time to buy fish in the country. So all of those things are super important to be able to put into perspective. But if our highly ecological areas are polluted, the tourists who are coming down, the Gambian people who are using those areas for their leisure or their artistic, experience will never go down there. If there is issue of like environmental, anthropogenic environment is in the country, people whose livelihood depend on those environmental resources, they cannot switch and look for some kind of alternative. What are we seeing in the Gambia right now? That unemployment for a mass proportion of the youth population. And what are we seeing? They are now going to the back way, trying to seek greener pasture because the country cannot offer something tangible for them. What is the main source of employment in the Gambia? Is the fisheries sector, it's agriculture, and it's also tourism. If tourism can no more sustain the youth folks, if agriculture cannot sustain the youth folks, if fisheries cannot sustain the youth folks, they gotta leave the Gambia and go somewhere where they can have a decent life for themselves, whether legally or or illegally. So now it depends on how we contextualize that particular major development challenge we have in the Gambia.
Yeah, thank you, Omar. Omar saying that another other impact of environment, the degradations, did not taking care of our environment. You quote the World Health Organization Global Health Disability Adjusted Life Year report revealed that that's 2016 though. The Gambia has an estimated number of 62,900 waterborne diseases. He said poverty and high cost of paying for state supplied water make some citizens to stick with untreated open wells for drinking and household sanitation usage. Omar, can you talk about that report that you wrote?
If you look at WHO, they have a report called Dialysis, Disability Life Adjustment Lifestyle. They look at how waterborne disease like diarrhea, cholera impact the citizens and how many number of citizens. So every Ministry of Health around the world got to submit a report to WHO. And WHO look at, okay, for the Gambia, this is how much diarrhea cases the Gambia people report to us. From the data from either from Ministry of Health and Social Welfare or Ministry of Health and Social Welfare or from RVH or across the health sectors we have in the Gambia, health centers we have in the Gambia. So in that report, we're talking about over 62,000 Gambian people have confirmed cases of diarrhea. We're talking about the reported ones. But how many people have diarrhea? They were not able to go to school, they were not able to go to work, and they don't even have that opportunity of getting a proper medication. It's a huge number. You know, 62,000 Gambian people. All of those issues, where do we have diarrhea? Most of the people, most of the time, we're talking about drinking unhealthy water. It's where we can have diarrhea. So how much is NAWEC charging Gambian people per water bill every month? And how many Gambian people can afford that? This is where you do your own economics. This is where you do your own maths, basic arithmetic. You add, you subtract. How much is the income level of the Gambian people versus how much we charge them to pay for this particular service we are offering them? And should this service we are offering, that's like water supply, be a luxury for them, or it should be a necessity for every Gambian people to have this one as part of our development agendas in the country? Water should be a major necessity for every Gambian people, regardless of where they lived. And then that should be a public good for every Gambian people. Gambians should wake up in the morning, turn that tap around, have water pouring down on their head for them to shower. Gambians should have running water for them to use every time for their cooking. Gambians should have clean water that they can drink. We have to switch from the use of uncovered wells in the country. You go to some villages or some families, their well and then their shower or their bathroom is so close. They are well, and then their tap is so close. You fetch your water, you put it in that particular bucket. You have house flies flying over everywhere. You have other like insects moving around. You left that water bucket uncovered. Dust is blowing around everywhere. That water can contaminate. Somebody just come with a cup, you scoop it, and then drink that water. You start coming have a stomach ache. The next time or the next minute, you have diarrhea. And that diarrhea prevents you from going to school. Or that diarrhea also involves some monetary cost because you gotta go to hospital to pay them and be able to have medication from them. So you've got to look at all of these small nitty-gritties and be able to address this situation. So from a policy point of view, how do we ensure the National Assembly of the Gambia prioritize this issue? They give Ministry of Health a higher number of budget allocation to be able to address water and health, or water, health and sanitation, as a fundamental human right in the Gambia for every Gambian people to have a clean running water for them to drink and use on a daily basis. Because every country or any country around the world that neglect the issue of water, electricity in their country, that country cannot call itself as a developed nation. Water is so important, and electricity is so important. They have to go together.
Yeah, go together, Omar.
We should not focus on the curable aspect of that one. We have to first focus our intervention on the prevention aspect. In order to address the issue of diarrhea and other health-related problems in the Gambia, let's address the issue of clean, healthy water for every Gambian in the nation or in the country.
Yes, clean, healthy water. Before coming back to you, Omar, Dennis Wingate says, I honestly believe that there needs to be more recycling done. The amount of rubbish outside some compound is not only ugly, it's hazardous. There must be another way rather than burning it. And Idris Jane says, Gambians are good at policy making, but when it comes into implementation, that's a different story, Omar. Omar, some of the water projects that we are talking about is mostly concentrated in the urban area. The rural area, the government is virtually absent there. No electricity, no water. Even to have a well water for some of those up-country villages and small places is extremely difficult. And in the events of this environment, all these waterborne diseases and the level of diseases that are killing people, I think we can go more for prevention measures and put things in place, because the hospitals are not there to protect us. So, Omar, you've developed, you've advised a lot on the government, but NAWEC, their annual report, in 2006, according to your paper, the company registered a total of 1,004 confirmed water leakages across the country. These water leakages and all those things, what are the causes of them?
The water leakage will result in two major problems that I understand. Before, like having a water leakage from your meter to anywhere within the compound, you as a landlord or as a compound owner, you gotta pay for that particular leakage, because it's within your pipeline that has been registered from the meter to somewhere within the household. You gotta pay for it, whether you use it or somebody else use it, or it's just like pouring down there or flowing around in the compound. That becomes a financial burden on that particular individual. If it is a leakage or somewhere a pipeline bust within the country before it reaches the household, now you are preventing those households of having water for a number of hours, even days. I remember when I used to live in Bakau, sometimes we don't have water at home. We don't have water in our houses down there in Bakau, because they'll tell you, somewhere in pipeline, the pipe bust somewhere around American Embassy or somewhere around, pipeline mast or somewhere around Kotu area, the pipeline down the bust. And then people at home have to struggle with a small quantity of water that is available at home at that time. So having to have water to drink is a problem. We gotta buy the non water in that small plastic bag. We drink that one through the plastic bag, because people are not that much environmentally conscious in the Gambia. That's the fact. So you look at, okay, now having at least a population of 1,000, how many people are in Bakau, telling them that, we don't have any water right now because the pipeline bust somewhere, there's a water leakage somewhere. It prevents NAWEC of having that money from the Gambian citizen, of whosoever is going to use that water during the water spillage or the pipe breakdown. It's going to create a major stress for the citizens, because now they cannot have their health and hygiene. They cannot even take shower at that time because there's no water available. If you're attending a naming ceremony, you gotta just know how whatsoever you're gonna do yourself down there on your own way to get yourself clean and go and attend that social event. So, how many thousands of dollars is the Gambia government gonna lose in terms of revenue due to a particular water spillage, versus how many amount of money that is gonna become a financial burden of a household if they happen to have a water spillage in their home, because there's a leakage somewhere within the compound, and you contact NAWEC technician, and it's going to take them a number of hours, if not days, before somebody can come and respond and fix that problem for you. So I was trying to like look at the issue that water is so important in our development. If you talk about environment, talk about health, water is so central. Having only one national service provider, which is NAWEC, is not enough. If we need that, we need next at least we address the issue of water leakage in the country. So at least Gambians can do away with the issue or the concern of providing water as a basic need in the country.
Yeah, Omar, and another thing that you mentioned is the infrastructure, the pipes, and all those things of Nawek are so absolute. They are so old. They are not effective. They, the sands, all kind of things get into the water system because of the infrastructure is that poor. And there's no infrastructure when the leakage also happen that people can call Nawek to alert them that this is what is happening. Sometimes the water just keep flowing and flowing, wastage and wastage. When in the rural areas, there's no water there, there's nothing there. And Omar, the thing is, if you can highlight all these things and give a policy advice to the government, what about all the environmentalists? What about all the educated people and all those things? You mentioned about the political will. At some point, there's no political will there. Is that what you think?
Well, I think so. I believe that citizens are so important. We can have institutions in the country, but who is going to put those institutions into account? Who is going to put them to checks and balances? It's super important. Is the citizens who can say, what, this particular service provider is not providing us the service that we require from them, and we gotta make sure we petition them. We're gonna make sure at least we summon them to court for them violating our own right, for them not providing essential service good for we the greater citizens. So if that is done in the right way, we have the judiciary in the Gambia who can put them into account and tell what, hey, this is what citizens have at least listen to you guys. They have summoned you guys about this particular issue, and then that one can go through the court system. But then, who is the president? It's a Gambian. Who are people who are employed in these industries? They're all Gambian people. There should be that bridge of communication between the citizens and then whatsoever service provider in the country, be it NAWEC, be it other service providers in the country, for citizens to be able to at least contact them through hotlines that they can dial toll free without no payment. You call and somebody pick up at the other side of the telephone and say, hello, how are you doing? I am doing fine. And then there can be timely intervention for somebody to come down and fix that particular problem. We are in 2021. How many years since we got our independence in the Gambia? And we are talking about still the same issues across the length and breadth of the Gambia.
Yeah, thank
based on
you.
that particular issue, we believe that the government of the Gambia, through the Ministry of Trade and regional integration and other instruction the development Ministry of the Gambia, they have to have these issues as their focal area of intervention to be able to at least provide a review and assessment at least on a quarterly basis every 3 months or at least every 6 months. Review how is this particular service going on in the country, or at least every year have a report.
Omar, yes. Omar, Uncle Mori, my own uncle, says the current amount of foreign use merchandise in the Gambia is growing. What will happen to some of these goods when they are of no use? Is there any national recycling effort existing or in the pipeline? Omar, you attended UDPCR2 chapters gala dinner and fundraising. That's not significant. But one thing that you did significantly for me is you met the mayor of KMC, one of the biggest, local government in the Gambia, and more is questions, the best person that can at least, because if we got Serekunda right, Banjul and Brikama, probably things will roll easily to other areas. In terms of recycling, in terms of environment, most of the monkey park, the old cycling, whatever, are all within KMC. What was your discussion with Talib Bensouda? And what attracts you? Because you kind of seems to be in agreement with some of the things that he is doing. He talked to you. What was
I personally met Talib Bensouda when he visited Seattle. It was just a brief meeting, but whosoever knows me knows that if I have chance to talk to anybody who is at helm of authority, I talk to you about environment. And
Yes.
that was my little bit word with Talib. You are doing good the way you're trying to clean some part of KMC, talking about, some part of Westfield area to West Tabocoro. You try to plant some trees, you try to deal with the issue of sand in accumulation along the roadside. I was like, super important if you guys can be able to at least meet the landfill and the solid waste recycling center in Washington State. Meet with them and look at the concept that they got here and see if we can have the same kind of landfill or solid waste recycling center in the Gambia. I spoke to some key prominent UDP people here in Washington State. You know what? Hey, Talib is doing good. He's young, he's dynamic, and he's action oriented. Since he's in the country here in the US, why not he visit some of the recycling centers so we can have the same kind of models, if not a big one, but at least a small, tiny bit that can be able to at least accommodate the population of KMC in terms of their solid waste management. And that was like, at least out of will, I was like, you guys can do this. It's so important. Every development, the major thing that we have to factor in will be health and as well as sanitation. Sanitation cannot go if we don't have a proper place for us to at least address this of waste management. And in the Gambia, this is a major problem that we have right now. So that was my discussion with him.
Yeah. Yes, in terms of recycling and environment, hopefully he will. But Omar, you talk about agriculture and rural development, and you argue that failure of empowering the sector will have severe consequences in terms of social and political stability in economically developing countries, and Gambia is one of them. The government of the Gambia needs to accelerate growth of agricultural output in our country as a driving force for structural transformation. How crucial that move to restructure agriculture and focus more on agriculture in the Gambian context to build your economy around that will have a huge impact on youth employment, on rural developments, and giving money to the poor people, the poor farmers, and internal migration, rural urban migration also, Omar. And yes, you say robust national development policies are needed to respond to societal concern regarding high food price, food security, youth migration, environmental protection, gender empowerment, and the viability of rural areas. Omar, can you comment on that? And emphasize the importance of your statement. Yes, go ahead.
If you look at the Sahel region of Africa, you're looking at Mali, Niger, and all of those areas, they're having all this rebellion or they're having all these issues down, the insecurity, because of environmental induced stress that they're having down there. People does not have any livelihood, that's why they're migrating. People does not have, this is what we call the environmental refugees or the environmental migrants. They are moving from their community or from their region of the country to another area, trying to at least look for something that they can use as their livelihood. Coming down to the Gambia, look at Gambia as a case study. How many people are moving down from the rural part of the Gambia, coming down to the urban area, Brikama, Serekunda, Banjo, somewhere around Westfield, for them to at least have a job in the informal sector? A huge number of Gambian people. They will tell I'm from Jara, I am from, from Badibo, I am from this part of the country. I came down here because I own a small corner shop. Or I come down here, I'm a taxi driver. Or I come down here because I'm running this regular industry. But from 1965, since when we got our independence, or even before we got our independence, during the colonial time, we were like, agriculture is the backbone of the Gambia. Most of the Gambian people, if you look at even our family dynamics, most of the people then engage in polygamy because they won't have the labor force at family level of having so many kids who can support them in the farmland. And then what will that yield? At the end of the rainy season or the harvest season, they have a higher, bumper harvest that can at least sustain them in terms of food from one, grain season to another grain season. People were so much content with what they have. People were even doing barter trade at that time. You have your cool, somebody have their millet, you trade around. You have your millet, somebody have their maize, you trade around. You have your maize, somebody have their rice, you trade around. You have social events. You don't go and buy a bag of rice. Somebody will come with money Jansaro or money Bulo or money Defenko. Somebody will come with their Pakanko and bring all of those to that social event. There was social cohesion going on. But right now, look at the issue of food insecurity in the Gambia. Look at the price of rice, a bag of rice in the Gambia, and how many people got to struggle before they can put food on their table. If you don't have somebody in the diaspora, how many average Gambians who are in the country can afford consistently a healthy, high quality rice in the Gambia? How many people can afford that Saddam or the basmati rice or the high quality rice in the country? Very few of them. So in order for us to address this issue, we got to have the people going back to the land. And how do we ensure we have a strong policy intervention? We need the Gambia government to come in, like what do you call agricultural producing boards in the Gambia, to have like kind of farmers unions, to have what we call also credit unions to support these people, provide them with not the small farming implement, but tractors, power tillers. Look at the issue of how can we make sure we tap in the River Gambia to provide fresh water supply for farming communities so that we can have all year round farming season in the Gambia. It's not going to be rocket science. We're not going to have adequate rainfall in the Gambia anymore that can be able to at least support the Gambian farmers to have all year round farming season in the country. We need to look at the issue of how do we tap in the River Gambia and use that water. How do we ensure we revitalize the Jahal Pacha Sapo rice project? Have the rice mills in the country. Because all of these projects, initiatives are going to create job for the Gambian people. All of this harvest, whatsoever we're going to harvest in this field, is going to go down to the Gambian to feed them. And then it's going to provide money as their return on investment of what sort of investment they have done in that particular farmland or in that field to support the Gambian economy. So what the government can do will be mostly about having, boards, or let's say, a credit union facility to support the Gambian people, provide Gambian farmers with the machineries that they need, and also create a fair playing market for the Gambian farmers. Farming is a lucrative industry in the global north, that's the developed countries, but it's a place, for poor people who are struggling with life in the global south, developing countries around the world. So we got to change the dynamics. If a rich person can go into farming in the developed country, we got to support the young people, our Gambian farmers, to also at least enjoy the same cream of their labor, of what they are doing in their farmland.
Very, very good, Omar. The Bamako initiatives and all those initiatives that Gambia signed to, at least we should have 10%, contribution to agriculture, the GDP, I mean. That is not happening. So, I only hope the leaders, saying in your Pakanko there, that really catches my mind. And that, that link to what Idris Ajane says, he said interesting and educative program, especially for the youth. I suggest if you can have one in the local languages, I think we will do that, Omar, next time. He also said, I think what we lack in the Gambia is civic education. Any serious government that wants its citizens to take ownership will make education a priority for all. Ababa File says, seriously, our homeland need a serious leader to fix the things in place. Omar, in one of your posts, and you said the Gambia diaspora community deserve a tap on their back. Either one is politically active or not. This false contribution deserves state's acknowledgement. That is in response probably to the, you said, the Gambians in the diaspora are used to put food on the table and cover medical expenses, school fees, of housing expenses, etc. And hearing their very own president downgrading them for political causes is quite unfortunate. Omar, we all know how important, how crucial diasporas are in terms of the contribution to the Gambia. Only the GDP, there's nothing below 22% that the diaspora contributes. Sometimes it's go up to nearly 40-something%, especially when COVID was on, and then most of the foreign supplies dried up. The diaspora stepped in. But, the informal sector where diasporas are sending money, it is unfortunate, as you said, for the leader, instead of encouraging the diaspora, tap into their expertise, their human resources, their money, and manage them properly for the benefit of the country. A president once he, as he claimed, was a diaspora, and I don't think he understands how diasporas work, and ridicule them to talk about, some of them don't get housings and all those things. Most of the diaspora people in the West and the America are very, very settled here. They could have easily go with their daily things and forget about the Gambia. But Gambian diasporas are champions because they never leave that small country. In terms of people requesting for medical attention, they will send money. GoFundMes are being set. They don't know who they are. They send money. Gambian diasporans are champion to see our own president to reduce himself to bend very, very low, to come out and start ridiculing the effort of the diaspora. That's very, very, very unfortunate. Omar, you have to dialogue. You're going to talk about those, posts that you said, and how bad that is for our leaders to come out and be confrontational to the people instead of acknowledging the contribution of the citizens and giving them lift in terms of their hard fought money that they share with their people back home, including the president. Omar, go ahead.
Well, if you look at the Gambian diaspora community, where they're in diaspora is somewhere outside, of the country. They can be in Europe, they can be in Scandinavia, or they can be in America, or somewhere in Canada. The main push factor that most people move out of the country basically because they create a greater opportunity for themselves and support their family back home. And this is where we are seeing most of the government are leading success story. What have this individual done for their country in terms of building a house in their own community, in terms of supporting their family with food, with sending somebody to school, taking care of a family member's medical bill, and all of that stuff. Gambian diaspora have been doing extremely wonderful. According to the data that I was able to access from World Bank report, about 413 or 421 million US dollars was sent to the Gambia within 2020. 421 or 418 million dollars was sent to Gambia. This was the one that was captured officially. But how many Gambian people talk to a friend for a friend's friend to send them money in the Gambia? How many people are in the diaspora who are not legally documented and they have to send their money to the informal sector? That was not captured. So having about over $400 million being sent to Gambia in 2020 alone is a huge amount of money. And then somebody out there in Europe, in America, in Canada, or in Scandinavia want to make sure Gambians living a decent lifestyle. And the political leadership have a greater responsibility in ensuring that transition, ensuring that development in the country. So if we want to call a spade, if we want to hit the target down there, we want to make sure we address the issues as they are. And then there's no better way of saying, what the government we have in place is going to neglect most of those issues. So, Gambian people who are in Europe, in America, other part of the world are helping people extremely well, wonderful in the diaspora. So seeing a president stand at the platform, trying to castigate, trying to ridicule, trying to talk bad about these people was quite unfortunate. And I was like, we cannot let this thing go like that. We got to raise the flag and say, hey, being it somebody politically active talking about political issues in the Gambia or being it like whosoever was quite unfortunate coming down from the president. The other word I underlined from that statement was he says they even came down to the Gambia trying to seek for employment. Since when I don't give them job, they happen to go back and not trying to at least put me into scrutiny. Well, you are not trying to create a rough lifestyle for that individual. You are not trying to give that particular individual a hard time in their life. Whatsoever that they're going to have, they will have that. If somebody who get their education or their experience does not have a job with the government, they're going to have a job somewhere. This is the reality of life. But then who is there to lose? It's the Gambian people, the Gambian government who is losing. A clear example is my own son. I'm not going to talk about any other individual. I was way back in the Gambia in 2017 that, hey, I got master's degree in environmental science. I am back into the Gambia to work. When I don't have a job in the Gambia, I came to US. Right now, I have 30 staffs who works under me 24 hours, who I'm not supporting. I'm supporting the US economy now. I'm supporting the US Ministry of Health in this country here. And I'm supporting this state to develop and go forward. And then my knowledge, my experience can go and support the Gambia. If they were able to seriously tap into Gambian people. How many young folks do we have, graduating from, Morocco, graduating from India, Pakistan, graduating from, Tunisia, in Turkey, graduating from Europe, from the US. This is what countries like Taiwan, the Asian tigers have done, Taiwan, Japan, Singapore, China have done. They were able to actually create a decent pay for their citizens, create a good working condition for these people, and be able to attract them to come down into the country for them to work with integrity without any fear that, we're going to be arrested the next day once we want to against the political leadership of this country. This is why they are developing. Some of these countries are, they got the same independence with the Gambia, places like Singapore. I was in Singapore way back in 2013, 2014. That country is so developed. If somebody will tell you this country got independence the same as the Gambia, you'll be surprised. What was the GDP of Gambia like in the 80s? And what was the GDP of China like in the 80s? Almost of the same margin. But look at China and look at Gambia. They're not even trying to export their expert to come down to the Gambia and support us in certain kind of projects. Gambia is a small population, less than 3 million people. We have to tap into our intellectuals in the diaspora to come down to the Gambia. So this is super important to help our country go forward.
Yes, Omar, that's very true. Any leader, any serious leader will look out, and bring, and try and attract the myriad of intellectuals, Gambian intellectual all over the world at top level of international organizations, companies, private, and all over the world. Any government that is serious to move Gambia forward need to tap into those resources and manage the diaspora, their income, because the $421 million, that is more than what we are borrowing or what people are giving us in grants and all those things. So if diaspora is sending that to the Gambia with a better government, diaspora will have a representatives in the parliament or diaspora parliament, because I see other countries that organize diaspora in that way. And diasporas are linked to some of the community projects all over the place.
Well, coming in down there.
Yes, go ahead, Omar.
If you look at the GDP contribution, we're talking about almost more than 20% from foreign remittance. That is just the official figures here.
Yes.
But the Gambia government could have done extremely wonderful. They can have what do you call open house meetings anytime that they travel for these international conferences. Meet with your citizens in those countries. Have at least an indoor meeting with these people, or even what we call brown bag meeting. Brown bag lunch with these people. Invite all those Gambian people. Hey, you know what? I'm gonna come down to Washington D.C. I'm inviting all Gambian people in Washington D.C. metropolitan area, whether you're in D.C. or in Maryland or in Virginia area. We are trying to invite you people to come down to this event, this so date. If you want to register or you want to come down, register on the particular thing. You can have people who are engineers, people who are entrepreneurs, who are business people who are doctors, people who are scientists, people who are scholars coming down there. Have discussion with them. How do you guys see the country? How do you guys think we can move this country forward? Is any of you guys want to do investment in the Gambia? What is the challenge? How do you guys think we can speed up that kind of initiative for you guys? If you are in China, do the same thing for people who are in China. If you are in somewhere in African country, make your own citizens down there, knows their concern, knows their inspiration, knows their aspiration. What do they want to do for the country? And try to support them and see whether the country will not go forward or we're going to be where we are right now.
No, it will go forward. Before coming back to you, Dennis Wingate said it must be very difficult for any Gambian government to find any changes when they can only rely on the tax revenue from the few large companies and tourist hotels. Borrowing money from other countries isn't the answer, which is very, very true. The little that we have, we need to manage it well. Instead, we are looting them. There's the corrupt entrepreneurs. Scavenging on these little resources that we have. For example, if you have a lot more than $221 million from the diaspora, who are nearly 400 and something thousand, about 500,000 of Gambians coming into that country. It can be managed. We don't need to borrow and loot all the money that we are coming into the small country into individual bank account, individual things. So if we close the tap on those mismanagement and the corruptions and all those things, solely Gambia can diversify a lot in terms of their economy and do better. Specifically targeting the diaspora. A doctor can be in England or in America, and now the telephones, the emails, the internet is there and help immensely. Not necessarily staying in the Gambia. But Omar, you are going to come and respond to that. Omar Mori, my uncle, says the Gambian government can make farming attractive again, and I have no doubt. Saho Marifuti says, "Salam alaikum, my brothers." And my younger brother also, Omar, greetings to you from Saho Marifuti. And Mariama Juare, my own wife, said the president's comment, was very, very, very rude. Omar, you talk about, in terms of the diaspora, you said the Gambian civil engineer badge that was sent to Taipei University of Technology. They can do better job. You were referring to the floodings and the project of Banjul. Yes, but he said that have correlated to your situation and my situation. I went back to Gambia. Many people with higher education went back there. the president is deliberately saying some of these things, he didn't know the consequence of it. It's high time for the Gambia government to make the best use of its trained young professionals, team of young professionals who are trained on specialized skills and give the right resources and see the result of what they will produce toward the development of the country. That is right. We have engineers, young people all over the place. Yourself and many of your contemporaries.
Sure.
Go
The
ahead.
case of Taiwan was so special. I was in Taiwan for 6 years. So this particular university, National Taipei University of Technology, and those ones were trained at least a batch of 25 Gambians, mixed gender, both ladies and guys together. To become, they have a civil engineering badge, they have the computer science badge, and they have the petroleum badge. When you have the petroleum in the country, those 25 people were like strongly trained to come together as a team to work based on their expertise to help Gambia in that particular direction. There are people who are trained as computer scientists or information technology specialists. 25 of them. You have 25 people who were like more than 25 who were trained as civil engineers. Before we subcontract certain kind of a roads project or certain kind of bridge project to foreign engineers or foreign contractors, we can give those ones to our own Gambian people. If you look at now the development world, the World Bank, they are now trying to look at what we call the paradigm shift of looking at the local potentials in that particular country. They want to look at local-led intervention, local-led project, local-led programs, of looking at even local consultants. If you want to come to the Gambia to do a particular kind of economic assessments or a project down there, they want to involve a Gambian person or a professional in that particular team because he understands the social dynamics, the political context, or even the economic situation in that particular country. So what is wrong if Gambia try to look at its own professionals, have this strong team of giving them the money, the right resources, and then the political will to do certain kind of development projects in the country. If I am taxed to go and do a project in the Gambia, I will do it out of my heart. So has the same other Gambian people. But if we give the project to somebody who's in the Gambia, they're gonna work based on the timeline. Whether they're gonna do it based on quality or they're gonna just do it based on the timeline, that's something else. Gambian people have to answer for themselves. So that was what I was looking at in that particular aspect. We gotta look at another university was not Pintong in Taiwan. They were training a batch of Gambian people on rice production. But the other thing I talk about integrity was you went down to a university, they train you to work in the field. They don't train you to become an administrator. They train you as a field worker. If you go down to your country, they want to hire you, tell them, what, this is not my expertise. My expertise is the field. When I was Taiwan, I was trained both on governance of environment and also in the field. So I can do both environmental impact assessment, but I can also work in the office to do what we call this stakeholder analysis and all this policy writing. But when I came down into the US, I was not trained in the field. I was trained on the policy aspect. So this was where we look at the different dynamics and the different things that Gambian people have. If we are offered a job, tell them, what, this is not my expertise. It will be very good if you guys can push me to this ministry or this department and give me this kind of portfolio.
Yeah, Omar, it is important, the Gambians, have their psyche of, sitting in the office and have a car driving you and all those things, Sometimes it's so important, to know your expertise, to know where you are going to have an impact on that country so that we can develop together. If we are seeing sojourns now turn into politicians now, when we don't have any sojourn in our country, those are serious, failures, egregious failures. As somebody who is trained to go into the field, to the rice fields and all those things, is sitting in Banjul, is not even visiting any of those rice fields. That's just going to be a big waste. But the nepotism, the corruption, and the party political consideration is manacling the development of the Gambia, because people are being given contracts. Some of them are Gambians, but they are not civil engineers, but they are giving road construction projects to them to build roads. You cannot get your head around these things, Omar. But Omar, we're going to come to another thing. That is the mass migration. We call it the back way, the irregular migration. It slowed down when we took over, when 2016, the new government changed and all those things slowed down. And we used to have a little bit of hope that probably things are going to change in this country and all that, but it's now most running now. especially the boats and dingy boats taken from Gunjur now, almost in every other week. You youths and youths and youths, kids of very, 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 very young age take off. Some get lost, in the sea. Some fortunate enough going to Europe. Some, just meander within these ozones and all those things and end up in Morocco and all those things. This is pathetic. What can you? Why can't our government, put their hand on these issues? And why do you think these, irregular migration is becoming more and more attractive for youth, even though they are dying in large numbers, even though the money that they are expensing into this journey can be tapped and used into something else, and sometimes, why can't we focus and fight and see that how powerful we are as a people, to do the necessary things than the amount of people dying, the amount of money that is wasting on this journey is crippling our countries, the youths, the families, and all those. But there are consequences, and I'm not blaming the youths. I'm blaming the authorities that failed catastrophically, the youths of our country to force them into this migration. And everybody is mute about it from the government perspective. Before coming to you, Omar, my own friend Pamodu Conte says, I agree with the guests, frustration over lack of opportunity. The Gambia needs a total overhaul of our entire system, and without a reform, we are doomed to fail. We had adequate and talented young mind across all sectors. Unfortunately, alas, our governments are not comparing to them.
The problem is, if we have a higher youth folks in the Gambia who are not employed, they don't see any future in the country of trying to support them in terms of employment, in terms of security, in terms of better livelihood, they are more likely bound to leave the source of the Gambia. This is the reality. Whether we understand and put that in as part of our policy areas of discussions or not, we'll continue to have this issue. So the Gambia need to understand the trend is going to keep moving. It's not only going to be in the Gambia, but the entire African region. We're going to have people moving around from Africa trying to hit the source of Italy, Spain, on Greece and all these European countries down there. So the main problem is, how do we ensure the Gambia as a country try to at least create employment opportunities for its citizens? One would suggest that it's important we look into industries that can create jobs for these people. How do we ensure we revitalize the agricultural sector? We ensure that the working condition in the fields, in the rice fields, in the millet fields, in the coast fields in the Gambia is able to attract the Gambian people. How do we ensure we provide at least a good market price or a fair price for the farmers, that every Gambian people can say, hey, I want to go back to the farm. I want to go and do this thing. How do we ensure those youths who are running permaculture garden, who are going to like horticulture? Because if you go down to Gunjo, there's this young boy down there doing horticulture. You go down to Parakisa, there's another boy doing horticulture. You go down to the Phoenix, there are people engaged in horticulture. You go down to the URR, you go even Janjambure. They have these women horticultural gardens, and you have young Gambian people who are going to agribusiness. How do we ensure we provide these people with incentives? How do we ensure provide them with credits, with loans, to at least help them to at least grow their business? How do we ensure we have the market for them? How do we ensure we avoid the issue of post-harvest loss? By having at least a transportation for them, having a storage facility for them, and then have accessibility from the farm to the market. This is also important. How do we ensure we have fishing equipment, fishing boats? We have good fish market, fish landing site for people who want to go into fishing industry. So this is also important for the Gambia government to say, agriculture and fisheries is something that I have to seriously look into and help the Gambian youth to have the job. Because if we don't do that one, what is going to happen is the huge amount of our labor market, these are the Gambian youth, are going to leave the Gambia and they're going to go out of the country. And then the country is going to be in the hands of other economic migrants from other West African countries. So it's going to be so important for someone to look into these issues.
That's very true, Omar. For that policy, tour de force. I hope our governments, will listen to you and see the wisdom that Gambian citizens can give in terms of policy direction and not also romanticize policies, but to implement those policies, so that we can reap, the benefit, of those policies, to develop Gambia, to move Gambia, because if no, crime rate will go high, drug takings and all kind of antisocial behaviors will go, because youths are frustrated, and the government is not doing anything to help them, to kind of, put a yes into their thing, and so you sub their energy. The youth's energy can light into that country. We can propel the engine of growth from our youth's energy and move the Gambia forward. Omar, you talk about the improper zoning of development projects, and we have a massive development going on our corridor in Gunjur, the tough city. That tough city is twice the size of Banjul, between Salaba, between Gunjur and Sifo and all those things. One, what is the benefit of that? Are you elated with it? What is the consequence, and what is your fear about that? Is that also an improper zoning of development projects in highly ecological area? Because that place, I remember, there were times we were saying tigers are there in Salah Bandinto and all those things. And even now, the porcupines, they are still there, the porcupine and all those things. I had Tough on my program here. I asked him about, the forest, the greenery that I know of that place. I don't know of today. He told me they're not going to cut trees until it's necessary. They are going to bring trees inside and all those things. What is your take, Omar? Omar, you are mute, I think,
Okay. So one thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna upload TAF for coming down there. So when I look at this of a protected area or highly ecological sensitive area, I'm looking at how many species do we have down there in terms of like wildlife population. Bijula Monkey Park, we got the monkeys down there. If you talk about Abuko, we got a national reserve as Abuko. But looking at that land or that bush side from Sala towards C4, was somewhere that actually needs to be developed at some point in time, because we're having a huge population growth in the country. That is going to help decongest some part of the KMC area or the Banjul area. Anybody who bought a compound down there will help reduce the number of human pressure we have in that particular locality. We're going to have people from Gunjur who want at least buy a compound down there to go and live down there. That's going to help at least depopulate Gunjur also to come down there. But something quite significant is how are they going to sustain the environment of that particular area? Well, Tafanjaya was on our Sky Power News last week. That was my questions to him. And he said they're going to keep the trees down there. So one thing that they can do is, if they at some point in time happen to cut down the tree, the good thing that they can do probably be to offset that tree, to pay for at least the replacement of that particular tree somewhere within that particular area, or at least work with some environmental groups in the Gambia, give them financial incentive for them to at least buy a certain number of trees and plant that somewhere in the country to replace one tree they have cut at that tough city. But other than that, I think pretty much we didn't have that much of a highly, ecological sense or endangered species of wildlife in that particular area. It's not a place mostly used for people of Gunjur or C4 for their livelihood, apart from having the rice fields down there sometimes during the rainy season. But other than that, I think they are good to go. What they have to put at the center of their development will be to keep the place intact. If you go to the US, you go down to the America and then Europe, they always do their landscape design based on the the environmental vegetation or the natural environment of that particular area. They don't come and put housing estate or a community, like what you call great communities in a place that is bushy. You don't want to come down and cut the trees. You keep it how it is and then build your structure based on the traditional landscape of natural area.
Yeah, Omar, thank you so much for your thought on that important topic. I had Tough with me here on Gunjur Online, and we had a lot of discussions in terms of empowerment, in terms of giving back to the community, corporate social responsibilities, and all those, especially the places around the area, Gunjur and all those things. Because in terms of pricing, also is going to be critical for ordinary people. In the UK, if you are building such a massive housing project, sometimes some part of the house is allocated to the council for the council to give it to ordinary people who cannot afford it, because if not, it's going to be a concentration of highly very, very rich people who can afford the area, the local people are going to miss out big time. So UK, sometimes I have a housing project just opposite where I am now. That housing project, certain amount of houses is allocated to the council. What council does is to give it to underprivileged people so that they can afford the rent in there. At least you can have a mixture of different people all around this place. And some of those mechanisms, I don't know whether I would love to have Mr. Tafa back again and ask him about that. Omar, you are mute, yes.
Something we also need to look into the Gambia, in terms of land acquisition, is super important. We're having a huge population growth in the Gambia. The fertility rate in the Gambia is so huge. Every now and then somebody gives birth to a baby boy or a baby girl. So in the next 50 years' time, are we going to have enough land in the Gambia to accommodate our population? This is the question mark that every Gambian think about. And this is something we need to look at as part of our development initiative. So I think what local communities can do is, if people who own those lands, communal lands, can agree with me, based on my opinion, will be, let them not sell the land. Let them lease to the housing agencies. They put their building down there and then they contribute royalties to the landowners. Then you can say, what, hey, we're going to give you this land. You develop the project here for the next 50 years or for the next 100 years to come. But this is the interest, or this is the percentage that will go to us as a landowner, to our family, or to our generation as royalty. So that's something that Gambian people can at least think along the line. Or if not even about royalty, but just list the land, and after the list period, whatsoever is on the land has a structure, has a project, goes back to the landowner. So that's something I just want to throw in out there and see.
No, Omar, that is important. We talk about that before youths, before we sell our lands. Why can't we rent them out? Why can you, use your own land as a collateral to access loans from the bank and develop projects and businesses? So I think, that's a very, very important thing to highlight. And definitely we will call you here again and have this discussion in Mandinka and other Gambian languages so that it can filter through to our people, so that they can know having land is power. Most of the time you sell these lands, even if you travel to Europe and all those things, if you want to buy that land again, the price will be about nearly 3 times the price you sell it. So that is important. Omar, finally we'll come to election. In few days time, Gambians are going to the pool and select leadership. And this is important, especially for our youth, so that they can know the condition, because everybody need to assess the situation in the Gambia, the economy, the infrastructure, the employments, and all those things. One thing that I notice in the Gambia, that leaders, our people should know, and they should notice that the power is in their hands. That's why politicians are leaving their cozy offices, going to them, sometimes even giving them money and all those things. What will your advice be to youths, so that they can participate and vote and assess things, not through emotion, but how they can have a better Gambia for everybody? The hospitals, the transportation, the employment, the economy, and many, many things. All those things matters. And we just going to implore our people. And I want you to wage in and advise our youth to go out in large number, knowing that they have the power to make a decision that will going to have a huge impact on their life in next 5 years. Omar, go ahead.
I want Gambian youths from Cotton to Koina, anywhere in the country, to realize that the power lies in their hand. The power is the voter's card. If we head to the poll on December 4th, on Saturday, remember, this vote I am casting here, I am trying to vote for this particular presidential candidate. It's not about today, December on the 4th. It's about the next 5 years to come. And that goes with the issue of, will this particular person provide me with reliable electricity? Will this person ensure that healthcare system in the Gambia is well taken care of? Will this person ensure that maternal mortality in the Gambia has been addressed? Will this person ensure that there's good national security in the Gambia? Will this person ensure that the Gambian youths have a strong or a good livelihood in terms of employment opportunity? Will this person ensure that there's good road networks in the Gambia? Will this person ensure that there's proper environmental protection in the Gambia? Will this person empower agricultural growth in the country. This is what every Gambian used to think. What does this presidential candidate have for me as a citizen of this country in terms of supporting my at least fundamental human needs in this country? That's so important. We have a lot of political candidates coming down there. We have people who are tested with power, like the MPP, like Barrow and the government. We've seen what they have done within the past 5 years. Do we want to go and vote them in for the next 5 years to come? That's left to the Gambian people. Do we want to at least test a new political leadership who can bring a new change into the country? That's so important. Youths are the one championing most of this election in the Gambia. They're the ones sitting on top of the gala-galas in the Gambia. They're the one having the flutes in the Gambia. They're the one doing the drumming, the dances in the country. We want somebody who will put their focus, who will put their interests at the forefront of any policy intervention we have in the Gambia. So that's so important. Know who you are voting for. Know what sort of manifesto they have in terms of supporting the youth in the Gambia. Know what is the track record of this individual, what sacrifice, what sort of effort, what dedication have this particular president candidate done for the Gambian people. That is so important for anybody to think about, for everyone to think about come December on the 4th.
Yeah, Omar, yeah, it was so good to watch and learn that UDP was not just a political party. It was community of diverse Gambians, a philosophy and struggle to see a country in which citizens are treated in an equal across the board way, in which public policies are geared toward meeting the intrinsic needs of every citizens of the country. It is a party calling for reforms in which the economy of the Gambia will be framed and tailored in such a way that development of the country and its policies are corresponds to their respective needs of the citizens in a sustainable and just way. Are you endorsing UDP then?
I'm not endorsing UDP. Well, in the bottom line, there are a lot of political parties in the Gambia. Exactly. And I have the chance to read at least 3 or 4 manifestos. And then I have the chance to at least look at the background, the track record of some of the politicians we have in the Gambia. I am not actively involved in the party politics, but at least every Gambian people, the politics in the Gambia, that's a neutral ground. There's nobody who will tell you I am not involved in the politics in the Gambia and I'm not supporting a political party, or I am not trying to at least advocate for a political party to win. Zero. There's nothing like that in the Gambia. Whether we do it openly or we keep it inside our heart, every Gambian is supporting a political candidate or a political party. This is the reality. So based on that, I have the the honor and the privilege to interact with at least some few political parties down there, and then looking at the policy, looking at the documentary of lawyer Useni Dabo, and then the things that he have done. I was like, yes. When Jawara was overthrown by the then Yaya Jammeh government, what happened was it was the NCP, the PPP that came together to be able to the Sirif Diba, who goes down to Lawyer Dabo and then say, hey, we want you guys to come down here, help us at least salvage this country. The guy was a trained lawyer at that time. He was like any other prominent young Gambian, dynamic Gambian right now in 2021. But he had to forgo his law career, after so many consultations with his close friends and families. To say, hey, I'm gonna put aside my profession, and then with all the luxury that goes with being a lawyer in the country and goes into politics. But it was not something like self-desire, like he just wake up one day and say, next election season I want to go into Gambian politics and contest presidency because I want to have that self-aggrandizement or whatsoever. No, that was not the main concept. So when I have the chance to interact with these folks, when I have the opportunity to see, what they were looking at the 5-point agenda, they were looking at their manifesto, I realized that, it was something, or a political party that want to make a difference. Yes, whether we agree with the way they constitute the current executive structure, or whether we look at it's been Lawyer Dabo for the past couple of years or whatsoever, it's not about that. But look at what does this party want to do for the country in the next 10 years, in the next 5 years, in the next 20 years to come. What sort of policies do they have? Yes, leadership can change, but the idea that a political party have is super important. If a party cannot have a strong, a good implementable manifesto, why do you want to vote them in? We are looking at policies that are measurable, that are implementable, and that are very, very specific. We cannot come with a very, very vague or let's say broad policies that you have no idea to implement those particular policies. It's so difficult, and this is where I think political parties need to come in terms of in reality with. We are not trying to change the political leadership or the president. We are trying to change the system here. If we bring in the system, who is that particular individual who can run the Ministry of Health, Finance, Agriculture, Environment? How are we going to implement this particular program? What is the master plan do we have here? So that was like my main take with what UDP have, with what the PDO I have, and all of those stuff. So I'm like, what? Yes, I have the chance. Numbers are very important, but also policy is super important. Important. How do we implement that policy? What is the brain, the master brain behind those programs is so important. And based on that, I think UDP is doing very, very wonderful within the past 5 years, trying to at least see how best they can tap into the young Gambian people, and see they got that strong, formation, for everything that lies ahead.
Omar, if you are invited to go and be an environment minister in the Gambia, the youngest that will be, what are you going to do?
Well, I don't think so. I don't think so. I'll go into that kind of a responsibility for now, but I think the Gambia have a lot of things to do in terms of environmentally. How do we ensure we integrate environmental protection with our tourism development? How do we ensure we work with countries like South Africa, Tanzania, and then Kenya to have some of the wildlife that they got down there, to reintroduce them into the Gambia so that we can boost tourism in the country? How do we ensure we promote climate change adaptation in the country? That's so important in terms of planting more trees across the country, in terms of promoting what we call reforestation in the country. How do we ensure we provide trees in the Gambia that can provide economic livelihood for the Gambian people? Is so important. So these are some of the things that I'm mostly any minister in the Gambia or anybody taking care of environmental decision making need at least advise the executive, or at least have it as a focus area of intervention in terms of the way they're going to be at least taking care of environment in the country. Work on restoration.
Omar, you've been in China, in Taipei, in Thailand, Taiwan, in Europe, in America, all over the place. You can speak fluent Chinese. This will be critical, since Chinese are in the Gambia and there's every chance they're going to be there for a while. That experience is so crucial, for younger people with those experiences and those broad education and experience all over the world, fluent in Chinese, fluent in English, highly intelligent, with a lot of educational background. We will want you to go back to the Gambia one day and let's reshape that country, and hopefully we are praying to have a government that will attract people like you to go back so that that country can go forward from where it is, because it is stagnant, so that we can put mechanisms in place. This mechanism can catapult us to making structures, and change our system for the better Gambia. Thank you so much, Omar. It is honor, for Gunjur Online to have you here. It is a proud moment for me as an uncle to have you interviewed, so that you can give your perspective to our people all over the world, especially the youth of the Gambia, to know that if somebody can come from the humblest of background and develop themselves to eminence, and that is what we have in you. He is a platonic devotion in environment, but as we can see, he has a sweep of erudition in many areas. That's how intelligent the young man is. Once again, Gunjur Online is dignified to have you. Gambia is proud of you, and we are all praying to have a system change in the Gambia so that the younger people of such caliber can go back into the country and be role models and spread their tentacles and infect other young people, so that we can have a community that will be hopeful that the Gambia, a country that we are all born, to give back to that country, so that we can have a better Gambia, where we are meandering, where we are going into and living in the fringes of high societies. We can have that life in the Gambia. I hope we have a change come this 4th December that will give us the Gambia, where we can go back. People like me, your uncle, can retire back home, peacefully. Thank you, Omar. Your last word to our people and our viewers.
My last word to every Gambian watching this particular discussion today is make a very good decision when you enter the polling station to cast your vote. Who do you want to vote for, and what plans does that particular individual have for you people? What is the composition of this particular political party? How many people do they have down there? What was their track record when they were working for the government? You got to understand that. It's so important. Always don't make decisions that is short-sighted. Think about the future. Think about the long-term implication of your vote. Don't vote with sentiment. Don't vote because you were advised to vote for somebody. Think about yourself. Think about the future of your country, and think about so many other Gambian people who are struggling down there. Think about the issue of insecurity in the Gambia. So many young people, infants as young as less than 5 years, disappearing in the Gambia. How many youths are living in the Gambia without employment? What is the issue of electricity in the Gambia? The issue of water in the Gambia? The issue of poverty in the Gambia? Who can help us address the situation? Vote for that individual. That is so crucial. So many people have been tested in the Gambia. Political parties have been tested in the Gambia. It's election season. Let's all go down and vote peacefully, go home. Whatsoever the verdict of your vote brings, accept that with good faith, and then let's give somebody a new experience. Let's give Gambia at least a new political dynamic, a new political environment, and see what the future is going to yield for our country. I thank you all. It's my pleasure to be here. Till another time, we'll be back again.
Thank you, Omar. We will have you in Mandinka or other local languages next time. Greetings to everybody who are taking their time to follow us today, and greetings to and an appreciation to all our management of Gunjur Online behind the scene. Without you, nothing will be possible. Thank you, our viewers. Until tomorrow, we'll have Imam Sidi Ali Jane to discuss about the leadership issues, since we are just at the corridor of elections on the 4th of December. We will talk about some of the attitudes, some of the things that great leaders have, in terms of, and we were going to sieve those things and see how can that have an impact on our decision on 4th December, this Saturday coming in Gambia election. Greetings to all of you, and have a very, very good night. Thank you.